Hello Chem 1A students, this is a short chemistry video looking at some common polyatomic ions ready for exam 3. Looking at this PDF which is available on Canvas, we can see we have a lot of ions, so I'm going to start here. We have a lot of ions that look like they belong to a family. So I would look for clusters like that. Initially there's also actually, it looks like there's some duplication here. There's, for example, these two you'll see over here as well. So let's look at, on either side, let's look at them. You notice that a lot of the ions have the suffix ate. So here, chlorate, carbonate, bromate, borate, etc. Ate means oxygen, a polyatomic ion containing oxygen. So it's a good idea to memorize anything that has an 8 at the end of it. So let's say, for example, you memorize chlorate is ClO3-. So the Joseph-Proust definite proportion between chlorine and oxygen in chlorate is 1:3. Then if you subtract one oxygen from the 8, you get the ite. So, for example, chlorate has 3 oxygens, chlorite has 2 oxygens. Notice that by removing an oxygen, you don't affect the charge. So there's a single negative charge on chlorate, and there's also a single negative charge on chlorite. Let's say we add an oxygen. Okay, so we have chlorate, the one we memorized, with 3 oxygens. An extra oxygen would be ClO4. Well, if you look down here, on this other side, we have perchlorate. Now, historically, this came from hyperchlorate, Hyper, where the prefix hyper meant greater than. So you'll know hyper from hyperthermic. When somebody has a fever, the temperature is above normal. So if chlorate is our normal, quotes, with 3 oxygens, then one more than 3 oxygens is 4 oxygens. So it's above the normal. It's hyperchlorate. Historically, the HY was dropped. I don't know why. I don't think it's a good idea. So we're left with perchlorate. So we've got perchlorate, one more than the 8. Chlorate, that 8. Chlorite, one less than the 8. Now, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's over here. If we go to this chemical here, this is hypochlorite. So you know that hypo, the prefix hypo means one less or less than. So for example, if somebody is cold, they might be hypothermic. They're below normal body temperature. So here the prefix hypo for hypochlorite is representing 1 oxygen less than the 8. Oh, sorry, 1 oxygen less than the ite. So hypochlorite is below chlorite. Below meaning you've lost 1 extra oxygen. Notice again it does not affect the charge. So overall we have chlorate. One above is perchlorate. Below chlorate is chlorite. One below chlorite is hypochlorite. Now if you look at hypochlorite, there's only 1 oxygen. If you were to remove that oxygen, you'd have, and they won't have it here because it's monatomic, you'd have chloride, Cl-. Okay, so I would definitely, in terms of strategy, I would look at that as a cluster, and you can learn a lot from just looking at that cluster. Let's see if I can find another cluster strategy-wise. Let's see. Yeah, look at these two here. So sulfate, that's the one you would memorize, and sulfite. Well, we know that ite is 1 less oxygen than 8. So if we've memorized sulfate to be 4 oxygens, then sulfite therefore must be 1 less than 4, which is 3 oxygens. Again, notice that the changing from 8 to ite does not affect the charge. We can see it again over here with phosphate and phosphite. So phosphate with a 1 to 4 Joseph-Proust definite proportion between phosphorus and oxygen, that's the one that you'd memorize. Notice that removing 1 oxygen to go from the phosphate to the phosphite doesn't affect the charge, it just removes an oxygen. Another example is nitrate. Nitrate, a 1 to 3 ratio of nitrogen and oxygen, that's the one that you'd memorize. You take 1 oxygen away to give a 1 to 2 ratio and you have nitrite. Nitrite is the chemical found in deli meat that, for example, pregnant women are told not to consume. And you probably, well, depending on your age, if you're over 21, I guess, you might recognize sulfite. It's usually on the back of a wine label, and it will say contains sulfites. So sulfites and nitrites and ites in general are not ideal if found in your food, although they're by no means lethal or anything. Okay. So I would learn clusters like that. In terms of general strategy for learning nomenclature, flashcards. Nomenclature typically is not something that somebody would spend a lot of time teaching, because it's like the alphabet, you teach a student the rhyme A, B, C, D, but then the student's got to go away and learn the rhyme, right? If you have 10 people and one of them's a professor and you all sing the ABC rhyme, you would never know which one the professor was, because there's no difference to being a professor if all you're going to do is sing a rhyme. So I can give you some insights like that, but there's no real, there's no depth to nomenclature. It's syntax, you're learning a syntax language. So flashcards, just muscle memory, get used to seeing something and just practice it. The one other thing I'll mention here, because I don't want to keep this video too long, is the hydrogen components. So we have a lot of chemicals here that have a hydrogen. So let's look at what happened to phosphate, for example, when it became hydrogen phosphate. So phosphate was down here, PO4 3-, that's something that you would memorize. And then hydrogen phosphate is the addition of hydrogen to phosphate. Well, hydrogen is added as H+. So if you add H+ to phosphate, the plus will take away one of the negative charges. So instead of 3-, we have 2-. And we've got obviously the addition of an H. Dihydrogen phosphate, we've added a second hydrogen, and we've lost a second negative charge to leave 1 net charge overall. And we can do the same for dihydrogen phosphite. We've added 2 hydrogen, we've lost 2 of the original 3 negative charges. But notice we don't, and obviously we've lost an extra oxygen going from 8 to 8. So I will close this quick video there. Feel free to reach out through Canvas on the Exam 3 Worries tab if you have any general concerns over nomenclature. And look out for another quick video where I go through the second file that I've put on Canvas, looking at specific examples and how you can look for patterns. But then ultimately, it's going to come down to you spending some time practicing. Okay, over and out.